My name is Joel McCleskey. I'm from the University of Houston, here today to talk to you about what we call the Cradle to Grave, a huge development project started at the University of Houston to bring together information from a wide variety of sources, from law services information all the way through career services and beyond. So what is it really that I'm going to be talking about? An integrated system. A system that will look at being able to take information not only from, for example, law services, who this year is coming out with a new format for their downloads, but a system that can deliver that information in an understandable, easy way to our clientele, in this case, the individual departments, the people that want this information, the students, faculty, and so forth.
Lead to the line exam.
This is not a new idea. Some of the major obstacles and reasons that you don't already have, for example, at major law schools, systems in place which are integrated is due in part to the technology itself. Relational database systems historically have not had the flexibility that today's systems currently have. This did not allow, for example, someone like Tailored Solutions, the product, to come out into the law schools and give the admissions department, the career services department, the CALI department, a comprehensive integrated system where information could be shared. And on top of that, of course, we have those folks across campus. We like to forget about them sometimes, but we have all this information that is in databases stored at the university level, what we call UHIT. That information has to be shared out. Here's the major problem with that. We need information that the central UHIT staff do not care about. We need fields of information that they will never be interested in. And that has a major problem when you're dealing with one integrated system for all these different departments. So what is it that you do need? Teamwork. Teamwork, first and foremost, from your dean. The dean of your law school, Stephen Zamora, for example, says to our directors of legal information technology, the department, I want a strategic plan. Then you need John Schultz and the current director of legal information technology, Gary Hartman, who's here today, that takes that very seriously. Writes that down. Okay, it's something that you really need, and this is really pulling from the session for IT management. It's very, very necessary. You need someone, in our case, Mary Ann Dubinsky, the associate dean, who says, I am open to this idea. One of the greatest drawbacks to bringing in an integrated system is not so much the technology at this point, as I'll show you today. It's what you find when you go and talk to the individual department heads and the people who have been using the older systems for 10 years. We have dBase, we have Foxpro, Tailored Solutions, we have old fund accounting information. All of this information is in proprietary systems, very difficult to share the information between the other systems. You need a customer support person, a person who can handle the day-to-day questions and show people how to use that system once it's designed. This is where we are in this brand new project. So what else do you need? Standardization of equipment. If, for example, a faculty member wants to purchase a laptop, that still needs to go through the IT department. In some cases, it will. If you don't have standards in place, that will not. If you don't have a dean supporting that, it will not. Reliable infrastructure. This is, I think, one of the biggest problems. Obviously not at this school. You have an outlet right there at your desk for Ethernet and for power. Many classes currently don't have that. And without that, mandatory laptops, students using laptops in classes, all of the discussions that would follow are based primarily on the reliable infrastructure and the networking in place. A help desk operation. This seems like a no-brainer, but a help desk operation that uses some sort of relational database system to actually track those incoming calls. A training program. Again, a customer service person who can deal with the faculty issues and the questions that come up, staff and students. And then once again, you cannot ignore the people at your central UHIT. These are the people who are going to be able to give you a lot of the information or share the information with you. So you sit back and you say, well, we have all these things, or we have a lot of these things, or we've been working on these things quite seriously. What else do we need? We go to the departments, they tell us what they need individually. Why can't we get there from here? You do need a relational database management system. Well, you don't need Y2K, but it certainly didn't hurt. This has forced information technology departments, information system people, to take a very serious look at least in our case, all of these different systems. When I started at the university, the first year of my life was spent not so much in helping individual people, although that was part of my responsibility, but learning the systems. 10, 15 separate systems. If you take a top-down management approach, Y2K has put genuine fear into the hearts of the administrators and faculty and staff and allowed for more cooperation than would have possibly been there had this not occurred. I'm going to show you a major piece of software called Oracle8 and Developer 2000, and specifically two parts to that. There's so much of Oracle and Developer that I'm only going to be able to scratch the surface here today. So I am going to cover the forms, the thing which you would see as a user or the users would see, and then also the reporting, which is a major portion of what we needed this for. The majority of this remaining session is an interactive. Jump in anytime if you have questions about anything that I'm doing here in Form Builder. When you install Developer 2000, you get a collection of individual pieces for building reports, for building queries. If you are not the best SQL or PL SQL programmer in the world, there is a builder here that you can use. In addition, Form Builder, which is the first thing I would like to take a look at. I'm tempting fate here, and this is an entirely live presentation. I'm going to be creating a form based on some tables of information. And I'm going to use the data block wizard. Wizards that come with Oracle and Developer, specifically Developer, in this case the Form Builder, to allow you not to have to program.
Is Developer something you said that comes with Oracle, or is that an add-on?
Developer is a separate package. It's a collection of packages, actually. In this case, if you purchase Developer 2000, you will get what I'm going to show you today. But in addition to that, there are a number of things that we're not going to talk about today, like an application web server, a WebDB server. To take these applications, I'm going to show you posting on the web. I'm going to show you how that works. But there's another package altogether.
Is it from another vendor? Not from
No, all of the information that I'm showing you today, except for one thing, which I'll talk about in just a minute, called DBMS copy, is from Oracle directly. I'm going to look at a table or view, and you do have to log in. This is something your developer would be doing, of course. This is not something that the end users would be doing, although the report builder is something, on the other hand, that could be very useful for departments. The first thing you have to do here is actually pick a table, and it does give you a list. I have pulled a collection of last year's tailored solutions, which was in a dBase product that's going away. We are replacing a lot of the smaller projects, like tailored solutions, all of our Foxpro installations, a lot of our Access Excel spreadsheets. We're pulling this all into Oracle to integrate this into one system to share this information back out. And I'm going to show you how I'm doing that with this. I'm only going to pick a few of these to begin with. You simply pick out, these are the columns in the table. If you're accustomed to seeing even spreadsheets, this is simply a column of information. And that's it. I've picked the table. The next thing which will automatically open is the basically the form itself, a form wizard. And the first thing it's going to ask me for is a new canvas. There's a couple of pieces of terminology which I'm not going to beat you with today. Basically, a canvas is anything you wish to put a button or a pull-down list, a checkbox. It's the thing which the form is built on. I'm going to leave this as a content and move on. I'm going to display everything that I just picked out of that table and change some of the display names just to give you an idea. And we'll simply leave that. What I'm actually changing here is what the user would see as the description of those different fields on the form. I'm going to leave this in form. I can also do just a straight tabular Excel type display of the information, leaving the number of records, and finish with those two wizards. It will open two things at this point: an object navigator, which is the main place for making changes after you run through the wizards, and then also the actual form itself. If you didn't care about aesthetics at this point, if you didn't care about having the ability to do a lot of very interesting things, you would be done at this point. You could move these boxes around, of course. I will run this form. It pulls up a previewer and runs that form. Not very pretty. On the other hand, all of my information is searchable on the screen. If I want to do a query of information, looking for all of the students whose permanent address is Houston, Texas, then I would get a simple list of people that met that particular search. Notice at this point that I have not done any coding. No PL SQL coding has been done at all. Now I'm going to pause for a minute before working on that form and show you. When I first started this project, the major obstacle involved with doing exactly what I just showed you, just to get to that point, was how do I get my information from one place to the other? There are several different ways. Oracle has a program, a scripting program, which I found to be rather difficult to use and time-consuming. If you call your Oracle representative, they will give you, for example, a freeware product, a response to where you might get that to find it. I went searching for this niche market and found a fairly good product called DBMS Copy, which is not free, but relatively inexpensive, a few $100s. And I'm going to run one of those interactive sessions now. The financial package that we have at the university is being replaced as all of the other packages are being replaced. They have patched Y2K in places, issues that they needed to, and will go to a full-blown Oracle, probably PeopleSoft implementation in the next 3 to 5 years. The Law Center is not willing to wait 3 to 5 years for the kind of integration that we already see today. By calling up the UHIT member across campus, my counterpart, and saying exactly what I just said to you, to them, the response was, we will give you the data in a simple, fixed-length text format. Financial, FRS information, HRS information, human resources. They FTP automatically in the background every night this information, which I can then turn around with this program and open, again, in a straight fixed file format. This one I've already built, for example. You have to, the first time you do this, and only the first time, create a data dictionary, which is a fancy way of saying which columns do you want to take over, which ones do you want to leave, and are they characters, numbers, integers, etc. What type of data are you trying to move? You can view the data at this point, sort it, etc. Now, what format do you want to output this in? This is not specific to Oracle. This list includes dBase, Foxpro, Excel, Reflex, Paradox, SAS, straight text. Most of the formats that you might want to move data these days, or many, are here. One of the reasons, Lotus information, Prodigy, Visual Foxpro, etc. In this case, I moved this data via ODBC to get the FRS information that we're using. Instead of doing that, let me go back to a previous file and show you exactly how that works. It's a fixed length format, which simply means the first 4 characters are going to contain a certain piece of information. Characters 5 through 10, it's a fixed format. But you have to tell it the first time what that means. I'm going to start column 1 of length 2. It's a character field, which I'm going to leave with the same name that we started with and add another column. And it really is this simple to build. That's all you have to do to move the data. Once you've finished with this, click ODBC, and the information will automatically be uploaded to your Oracle database. There is a Microsoft wizard that comes with Oracle for Access databases. Unfortunately, it does not only move the data. It tries to create an entirely different schema. A schema is basically the collection of information for a particular group or table. Or it's an organizational structure. And you don't want every single table that you pull over to have its own organizational structure. You want CLE material to be in CLE, or you want financial information to be grouped together. So you want to do that grouping yourself, which is the reason I ended up using this product. No questions?
When you import it in using ODBC, say for example you're getting address update information, does it find, do you have like a key field that it finds if the student ID number matches, that it just overlays that, or does it add additional fields?
This is not a program to do updates. For the law services information, for example, that I'm taking from law services, the additional step that you would have to take, the FTP is automatic in the background. You can schedule DBMS to run with a dictionary file, automatically pulling that information over. You do not have to ever do that step again. What you do have to do if you want to process it correctly is to load that information in a temporary location, and then through PL/SQL programming, which you do have to script, put that into your permanent database. If you attempted to pull that information in and you had a primary key, which basically means uniqueness, you cannot put the same two pieces of information, say the letter 5, the number 5, and the number 5 in the same table if its primary key is in that column. That's all that means. It must be unique. For example, we use Social Security number, a unique identifier for our students as a primary key. So the answer to that is, it is not designed for anything except the manipulation and transport of. It will not do the automation for you as far as the setup of the database. That is how this information was pulled from Tailored Solutions into Oracle. Now, as I said before, if this is all you wanted to do, but of course, it isn't. The departments want to be able to see these things in a more usable format. That's where the real development process begins here. Once you pull over your information, you have all the information structured the way you want it in Oracle, that's when you actually start additional development. Most of that takes place, question? Most of that takes place in the Object Navigator. All of the items are collected together in what's known as an object block. It simply means that when one piece of this information is changed, all of the information is changed, and that was automatically done for you through that wizard. As you begin changing things, however, this is where you have to actually start doing some programming. I'm going to change this from a text item to a list item. You have three options: a pop-up list, T-list, combo. Basically, a pop-down list is exactly what you're accustomed to on the web. Click the button and all the choices are pulled out for you. A T-list is a scrolling text list, and a combo list is, in case, for example, which is the one that I'm going to use and usually use, if you wanted, for example, the users to be able to enter additional information in that pull-down and have it populate the pull-down list automatically, you would use this combo box. You have to define one element in the list in order to instruct this program as to what type of character it is. That particular one, Houston, is in the Mail City list. It tells it it's going to be a variable character, and that's the only time that you'll ever see that. The other thing that you need to do, and this is where the programming starts. So we've changed our Mail City into a pull-down list. But where are the different options in that list coming from? You haven't told it that yet. In order to do that, you create a record group. This statement basically says I want to pick out all of these cities, distinct cities. I want no duplication in the cities that are listed. I want to pull that list again. The reason for that is that you need one for the list, the thing which you see, and you need one for the actual table itself. From the table, class 98, and I want to order it alphabetically. I'm going to change the name of this just so it's easier to use. I don't want that list to be populated after the user starts that session. I would like that list to be used immediately, already available to that user as soon as they start. This requires triggers and procedures. A procedure is simply a collection of code that does a specific thing. I'll show you one in a moment. And a trigger is the thing which activates or fires that particular process. In this case, once again, you have some help, a wizard, if you will. Every time this form opens, when I get a new form instance, I would like something to happen. What is that? And instead of typing all that code out, which is not very long, I have written a procedure here, which I'll describe briefly. And all of this is taken, by the way, almost exclusively from 3 books. They're all Oracle Press books. This is, for example, the handbook for Developer 2000. There's a PL SQL book specific for PL SQL programming. And then the book that I most highly recommend is the complete reference for Oracle that comes with, does not come with, I'm sorry, you purchase to use the server. This code basically says, I want to create a procedure, a collection of actions, called setup list, where I have a variable character, which is the list, the thing you see, and a variable character, which is the group, that record group that I just created. In case there's an error, I want to raise an exception. You always have to program, of course, for the possibility of error. Begin, if the error exists for that, then you're actually going to raise the exception that there is an error. Otherwise, you're going to populate the list with this program. And that's it. You compile it. If there are any errors, which, okay, there is one. Which I had not expected. Oh, I pulled this from the wrong. Okay, sorry about that. Close that. Oops. Close that. The best laid plans of mice and men. Did not type that code in correctly, so I will go back to and the coding is always the most work that you will have. I'm sorry, are there any questions while I'm doing this? I do have to go back into coding. I'd rather not type it in again, although that may save me time, ultimately.
What's the end user overhead for the machines that they have to have? For instance, Access has extreme overhead even when the users are just using simple input forms.
Most of this, including the procedures, all of that type of information, the majority is firing on the server. You would add that to the server instead of right here on the form. It's no different. The coding is no different. I'm reading this as much locally as I can. It is some overhead as far as the previewer itself and the forms. We haven't found a problem with a Pentium 100 or anything that's even remotely of today's caliber of machine, but RAM. RAM is something that you need more of. 64 megs of RAM to have a number of other programs open at the same time is required.
How far along are you in the development?
We have finished the FRS, the reporting part of this project. We have not distributed it to the individual departments yet. The reason being, as I said before, we do have the support of our associate dean, but as perhaps the faculty member here today, Seth Chandler, can tell you, not too many people have seen this. It is very new to us.
So if not many people have seen this, and you're building this for your departments, including your career development, financial aid, and everyone else, I'm assuming they have some input.
Correct. I have gone to each and every department member and sat down with them and basically said, look, this is the old system and we're doing away with it. As soon as they accept that, and that's the first, as I said before, the greatest.
You say that, give them time to cool
I
off.
do. I have. I've been running. Yes, absolutely. It's very important that they get a feeling that what they're going to see is what they need to see. And in this case, you really will. What we're doing is tailoring the individual departments' GUI. And so I have gone to each and every one and said to them, look, I know what you have, but suppose I gave you what you had and then asked you, what would you like to see what the response has been. And in 2 cases, I've actually shown part of this just to give them an idea of where we're going. So it is very, very important, and that falls back to teamwork. If you cannot go out and talk to the users about what they expect to see, it makes this process much more difficult. I don't happen to see the error in this, and I'm not going to labor on it. This coding is something that you write, you store on the server once, and you never have to think about it again. You return to it repeatedly. In this case, of course, I'm not sitting there with all of this information stored on the server, so I did have to do that locally, which is the reason you can make mistakes. And I will not labor with it, as I said. The trigger would fire when the new instance happened. And what you would end up seeing, instead of the straight text box, is simply the pull-down list. The other way that I can show you that is by changing the elements directly.
One of the shortcomings of the access is you're including career development, law services, everything else, is the ability to go in and make changes to their core table and data without locking everybody else out from the administrative point. Does that occur as well?
Not at all. What you end up with here, and I'm going to get rid of that coding. What you end up with is something which is running either from a stored file server, and that's just this form itself. It's a compiled form which runs in a previewer. The only time that that data is hit on the server, of course, is when something interactive happens, which we are going to see, believe it or not, in just a minute. But you can stop at any point and rebuild that. There is a developer server which helps you distribute this information, and it really is as simple as doing your programming and then distributing that information back out, either to the client or even if you wanted to use something like SMS. or another product which simply spits the information out. You could put it in any number of things, email, zip files. The user would close it, save it, reopen it, and it would work. Okay, did we get rid of all that? Good. Well, let me create a separate item here for you, one that will work, code that I know will work. I apologize for that. Actually, the coding for that comes directly from the book, and it's me mistyping. It is designed to be a very simple piece of code. In this case, I have created a separate item which did not come from that database. And let me make that a push button instead. Oops. I neglected to put that on the canvas. As I said, when you create something, the first thing you have to do is place that on the canvas. Not a convenient spot for it. And now I will actually tell it which report I would like to run. There are several different ways to do this. I have already run the report builder, which I will show you, to use an existing file. So let's try this one more time. If it compiles successfully, you can close it. And one other thing I would do here, you can run this in the background as a batch process on the server. Oops. Or in runtime so that you can see the results. I'm going to spit this out, mail it to the screen, to the printer, or simply preview it. In this case, I would like to preview it. You always have to compile any coding, PL SQL coding that you've done before you run it. When you click that button, the report will be pulled from a predetermined report that you created, spit back out to the user, against the server, of course, for the most current results. Here also, PDF, HTML. I can spit that information out. For example, save it directly to my web server. Again, the report builder is actually the second part of this. I'll show you that in just a moment, where you build the reports first and then refer to them in the forms for your users. Let's see if that ran correctly. Thought I saved that.
You know, how do you deal with what librarians call controlled vocabulary, so that you make sure that when you, because you're pulling from multiple databases here, obviously table names are going to be different.
One of the most important things that you can do, when that data is pulled over, there's also a small amount of coding to be used to break it up, for example, into multiple tables. There's also security for Oracle can be handled through what's called views, which is a little misleading. A view allows you to take bits and pieces from any number of tables that you wish, bring them together that looks like one table that you can pull information from, even if it's 100 tables. And you can set security on that view. If you want read-only, for example, that person would not be able to write back to those tables. If I wanted to write to all 100 tables, I could do that through a view by simply giving the ability to write to that view. I do not have to change the permissions on the tables themselves.
Actually, my question was more on, for example, we have databases that were designed in England, and so it has house number instead of address, and so there's different tables. But not only that, but then there may be fields where the city and state are both in the same field. I mean, do you run into that problem where you have to then run another program to break that up, put it into separate tables?
What I would do is use the DBMS or a select statement to just simply select that out. For example, on the DBMS, if the output is exactly that way and you know where that breakup is, comma delimited, space delimited, if you know that there's any type of breakup at all, you can incorporate that into the feed, into the information before it gets to that server, and then break it up that way. What I have done thus far is pull the information over into a temp table and then use just a few basic select statements. I'll illustrate that since that's easier to do than tell you. Suppose I wanted pieces of information out of the class 98 table that I'm using that has dozens of fields in it. And I wanted that information for a particular table, either to send that to someone else or to use it myself. I can select, for example, the city, social security number, distinct, once again, just so that table doesn't grow, be too large. I don't even know what I picked, it doesn't matter. Am I logged on here? Yes, but I need, sorry about that. Give it a table name. Whatever the information is that you're looking for. what I end up with is a table that has two pieces of information in it. If I wanted to send that to someone or break it up or use it in another form, I can easily do that. That's simply another part of the PL SQL programming that you would do on the server that you would have to do once if you knew that you would continually get that information. If it's a one-time deal, you simply do it and move on. This template that I used, you can edit very easily. Let me show you the report builder. I'll close a few things here. This is simply another piece of the Developer 2000 package. Once again, the first thing you get is a wizard. Some interesting things that are automatically here, mailing labels. For those who want to send information out, still in the form of a letter. Straight tabular information, and then a form letter itself. Your admissions department, Alumni Career Services wants to send out hundreds, thousands of letters at the same time to different people. You can create both the labels and then the letter itself and simply have that either email or, of course, spit out to a printer. And then, unfortunately, you have to lick and stick and put them in the post office. But those are built in. That comes with the product already. I will do a straight tabular display. Once again, you do have to use very basic SQL programming here. Very long table. You can automate this process once you have all of these pieces put together. If you want to automatically spit out the same report but with updated information, you simply schedule that with a scheduler built in to the server, which, by the way, you schedule from the desktop. You don't have to go to connect to the server separately. To include all of these, I'm not going to change the display names. I will pick a slightly different template. And then I would simply save that report format and be able to spit it out over and over and over. What else can you change about your form? Just about anything. If you decide that you want to change the visual attributes for that form, make the background black, and you wanted to apply that to all of the form or only part of the form, you would do it in that specific area. For example, if I wanted all of the Canvas information to be displayed with something extreme, something you would never do. In addition, if you don't like the menus that are built in, You don't have to use them. You can create your own menus. Again, something you would never pick, but the capability is there for changing the colors. Notice that the menu is now gone. The menu items that were there before are now gone. I did not tell it which menu file I wanted to use, but you can create one. If you didn't want to use the menu at the top and you simply wanted to do individual buttons, for example, to do exactly the same things, I typically create a separate block for this. Which I call a control block. It simply means other things that I want to do, not data-related data blocks. This is not part of the database, for example, or will not be. And once again, I would add a new item to that. You can change the color of just the fonts on that particular button, for example. Whatever the label may be. Didn't place that button, of course. In this case, if I were to add additional information here, I could use that as a save transaction button or a save button. Instead of create a menu, just create buttons to do exactly the same things. This is coming to a rapid close. I didn't say too much about web. There are brand new products out for strictly web development using this same process where an application server is used to stream this information back out. That is brand new to us. We've not done that development yet. This was fast and, believe it or not, easy, with the exception of my miscoding. Much of the coding you can actually find in the Oracle books. The PL SQL book has some good examples of how you would take individual pieces of information and string them back out. Questions?
What's the price range
of the package? It is not as cheap, obviously, as a lot of the things you've seen here at this conference, for example. But look at it this way. What do you want to do with it? There are no limitations here, especially with this package. Anything that you can think about pulling together, you can do. We run our help desk operation on an Oracle-based system called Remedy, but it was based on this. Our university information that we're pulling, for example, we have found very, very difficult to get reporting information other than once a month. You know, they send those reports to you and, well, that's the best we can do. Sorry, we're understaffed and underpaid. With this, you can develop products for that. So yes, it's not the cheapest thing on the market by any means, but a relational database I think is absolutely necessary if you plan to do any sort of work at your law school like this.
So how much? What's the ballpark though of the price?
Depending on what you buy, start 10,000 because you want to get at least enough concurrent users, and then you also want to look at your web, which is not a separate installation, but certainly you would need to know how many unlimited licenses you'd like to use. But definitely start with 10,000 and a few thousand for the developer packs as well. So it is not cheap by comparison.
What's your client software?
No, it's not.
What's the client software that you use?
That is the client software, by the way. I'm sorry, I didn't make that as clear. The Developer 2000 package is the client. That is what you end up. This is what you would see. This is what the user would use. Now, granted, there are a lot of things you can do to make this look better. You can add graphics, change the color schemes, make a nice menu which you can use over and over again to specific for your users. The hardest part in getting the information moved over, which was a big piece, and then also going out to the users and convincing them that this is a good idea and worth doing. Other questions? Yes.
So did you look at anything else like GD2 or is it still
We did.
or-
We did. I looked at SQL Server before 7.0 came out. 6.5 was much slower, significantly slower than this, than the Oracle product. Part of the reason that we went with the Oracle product and the developer package is it is really easy to use. I don't know if I've demonstrated that today, but for a developer, for a person who can simply, pull up text boxes and checkbox and that sort of thing, and be willing to learn a very small amount of PL/SQL coding. You do not have to learn a lot of coding to make this look better and actually present it to someone. And then, wow, that's wonderful. I can pull up the students that are, from whatever state, city, or whatever. It is relational. We did not look at dBase, any of the dBase implementations or Visual Foxpro. And only looked at Microsoft SQL or Oracle. Part of that, again, went back to the university. Our university is, in the next 3 to 5 years, I've been assured, going to either PeopleSoft or one other Oracle-based product, and we're getting licensing to cover the entire university. I'm going to hold my breath and go ahead and develop this package, and then if we can fit into that scheme, excellent. If not, I can always get the information in a format that I can manipulate and present back to our users in an understandable way.
How many concurrent users can you support?
Say again?
How many concurrent users can you support? And what privileges is it? Like create objects?
If the question is about support for the users and using this product,
Right.
yeah. This is why I said that in teamwork, we really seriously need someone, in our case, Sharon Gibson here at the end, who is a customer service person. Our job is to make sure that customers get the sort of help that you're referring to. If you do not have the time to do the development work, stepping off into this area is exactly what you would think in any other session you've seen. People use an access database, do a specific thing, they deliver that thing, and then they move on. This is not that kind of project. It is not intended to be that kind of project. If you cannot devote the time to making sure that the structure is in place, you might be better off with something smaller.
Who's your staff?
Staffing. Myself, I am the network person, the person responsible for servers, infrastructure for the law center, and development work. Specifically, even the web server. I'm the point person for the back-end operation. Sharon Gibson here is our customer service for University of Houston. She manages the day-to-day operation full-time. Gary Hartman is the director of this department, executive decision-making, my boss.
I think the question is, who's doing all this?
There's myself and 2 students.
Part-time, full-time?
They are part-time. They're working more in the summer because they have a little more time. This part is very easy for students to do, believe it or not. What we do is go out and get MIS people, IT from the campus, computer science people, who can very easily do this part of it. And then I take care of most of the back end for the Oracle itself, which thus far has been more of how do I get this information? Where do I get it? And unfortunately, I've had to do most of the legwork for the individual departments because, of course, Sharon is tied up with the work at hand, keeping customers happy with our help desk operation while I do that.
That's the latest question. You started that time period.
Yeah. The actual development work itself has only been going on for a few months. This part of it. The decision-making to do it has been going on for 2 years. The idea, as I said, is not a new one. Cradle to Grave is a title I stole from Gary Hartman here, who has always said that it just makes sense to have a sort of integrated system, and why can't we have it? Part of that, again, was the technology. I mean, relational databases have come a long way in the past 5 years alone. But I would say the development work that you're seeing, only a month or two, a couple months, 6 at most.
Did you get any training, or are you sending your students?
The only training that I have received is in the form of CBT. And that was very limited. I mean, it was on the form specifically. I have found that it is necessary to take a hard look at Oracle and the server side. As far as the development of using these packages, you could easily show someone in a couple of these sessions. The answer is no, not formal.
I don't find myself easily in a position of defending Microsoft products.
Sure.
I feel that this is a bit unfair towards a product like Access. I think in terms of functionality, there is not a lot that you have shown that couldn't be done with Access. The truth is normally it isn't done because people don't realize that Access is a fully blown relational database management system. And most Access programming isn't done professionally.
Yeah.
But for reasons of presentation, for reasons of price, people know that being an Oracle programmer is a profession and you have to learn it, whether you do it formally or informally. Mm-hmm. So my question really is, I would like to go back one step. Why, in the end, Oracle and not another solution? Is it on issues of really, is it functionality, or is it scalability, or is it...
It is a collection of those reasons. For us...
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm sure you're right.
I understand the question.
I would like to know a bit more.
For us, I'm really not looking... We could do what you're suggesting in Access. It is doable, obviously. It would take, in my opinion, because I have done VBA for Access, more of an effort and certainly more full-time people. If I'm going to be one of the only people doing this development, plus students, I find this incredibly easy. I really do find that for them this is incredibly easy. I will take care of the structure of the server, and the other piece of it for me is that I like the centralization of having everything in a single package, and I'm not worried about scalability. Not anymore, obviously. I was concerned about the scalability of Access. Granted, we have not had a problem with it, but with the amount of information that I'm putting in one place, I simply don't want to take the risk that I can't move forward from this point. And again, the other reason, as I mentioned before, our university is covering licensing partially, not completely, with this product. And that played a heavy part in deciding to use it. I mean, I admit openly. We're not fronting the full cost of this. We are up front. But we're getting it back on the service agreements, the fact that they are providing training for us. And that's not the 3 to 5 years. That's going to be in the next 6 months. So again, part of it is that our university is actually making this move as well. But scalability to me was a concern. And the fact that I have found it incredibly difficult to get the students that we hire. And of course, many people have to use students. That's just the environment that we work in. To do these individual projects and then be able to combine this information together. I found that to be incredibly difficult and time-consuming. Where if I start from a centralized point, then it actually works in the opposite direction. And those are the reasons, primary reasons.
Will you ever be able to get out of Oracle again if you want to?
Sure. Anytime you go to a relational database, you can always use SQL. Always. I don't care if you're using Microsoft SQL or whatever the particular product you're using. I could pull all of this information out, all these tables out, in a very similar way to the way I just created that one table with the data in it already. Run that through a couple of procedures and I can pull every bit of this information out. It's much easier to get the information out, in my opinion, than it was to get it in. And that third-party product made it incredibly easy, but without that, I found it difficult. But yes, I mean, getting it out is the easy part.
I didn't understand that.
The third-party product is the DBMS copy program.
Was it the clunkiness of the data definition language, or was it...
If nothing else, the learning curve, perhaps.
Okay.
I found it to be clunky. Certainly not as easy as clicking a few buttons and all the information just magically showing up. But we have such a wide variety of information that I would once again have to I would sit there and, okay, now I have to define that definition for Oracle, and then I have to make some changes because the data doesn't really fit. It came from a different product, and the format's different. I mean, this person has spent hours in C programming to come up with a program which already has those formats for me. If you look on that, if you run that program, what you end up with is the command line and then all these parameters for every different product. And it's a string, as long as my arm, for example. I would have to do that. I would have to sit there and figure out, oh, well, this is an exception to that, and I need to go back and code that out, literally. And for this project, with the scope, basically, of how much stuff, it's difficult for me to tell you just how much stuff we're pulling in, but everything. I mean, absolutely anything that you can think of, our job listings, you name it, across the board, and that's why we call it Cradle to Grave. It really is pulling all that over. I'm the only person who can do that consistently and reliably, and there's no way. The same is true of Access. I mean, again, that's part of my main... I need students to be able to do this. And I need to not hire a student who has SQL programming ability. I simply need to be able to say, take this little program and do this, this, and this, and it just always works. It has to do with speed of development. And again, speed of development is not something I hold against Access. I'm not against Microsoft, of course. We have NT servers, even. We don't use, yes, I know, and believe that. Not a Unix group. But in this case, just found that Oracle's much, much better. Other questions? Sorry, I got off on a tangent there.
Do you use the transaction log feature?
I have not used the transactions for anything except for what I am doing to see that everything is taking place properly. So yes, but only to the extent that I want to know that I'm not going off into an area here that where I automatically have all these things taking place in the background. See, I'm scheduling all of this. I'm doing it once, I'm setting it to run, and I'm moving on to the next step of the project. So transaction-based, like rollbacks and that sort of thing. Rolling back is something that I've only had to do when the data was not what I wanted in that permanent table. Could have dropped it, but just roll back that session. It's the only time I've ever used it for rolling back. We increased, as a matter of fact, the size of the rollback segments I did for that very reason, because I wanted to do transaction logging network, but primarily not so far.
And I wonder how you configure a server, like how many do log groups do you have? Do you archive your
We're doing, I've already set up the schemas based on basically departments. And to be honest with you, as long as you have a structure in place, Oracle doesn't care. Developer especially doesn't care. Because as I said before, you can create a view and you can still pull that information from as many different places, schemas, tables that you need. And you're not worried about going back to the permission levels of those tables. You do not have to do that.
But what if you update your database very frequently, and once if you don't archive the data, probably one day there's an immediate failure, they probably your transaction are lost.
Of course, there's a separate package for failsafe for Oracle, just like with any full-blown relational database product. I mean, you can actually purchase a separate product, and you can also use replication. As far as security, fail-safe, am I safe? Is this a safe way to do it? Most of those questions have been answered in the full-blown relational database product. You just have to take the step of saying, I read the book and I did it. be perfectly honest with you, the security issues, is it a safe place to put your data? Those have all been handled. Do you have, hardware, RAID covered, multiple drives to store the information? As long, again, it's standards of equipment. As long as you do that, but that's with any system. I mean, I could say that of dBase or Foxpro or Access or anything else for that matter. As long as you have, the information backed up. And you know how to restore it, of course. How to get back, which is much more important. We had a crash about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, where we did not have enough backups in place. We had the backups in place and did have a backup, but it was a single point of failure. If, for example, I lost that tape, then I lost too much information. And we reevaluated through that process and back up every server on that server. There's a DLT on every machine, on every server. Just because a single point of failure for backup is never a good idea, and we learned that the hard way.
And do you have to remodel all the data types? Since you put data from different applications, probably you have a duplicate table names and view names.
The most important part of this project, again, is that getting that data. When I say that I set this up, leave it to run and walk away, the biggest part of my job has been duplication of information. dBase and Student Services has student information. Career Services has student information. Every department has these little programs that have information that's duplicated. That's the biggest part of my work. It's not this, believe it or not. It's making sure that, and that's my job, making sure that the data that gets in is as good. And that's the other thing that I find, the data that I'm starting with is, not always that good. Those decisions have to be made, but it only has to be made one time. Don't forget, what we're doing here is doing away with a dozen products, literally a dozen products, into these individual departmental forms. So yeah, I would say that most of what I do stems from that. And the development of the actual forms is left not entirely to the students, but certainly they can sit and do what I just did with me overseeing it. So yes, it's crucial. It's crucial. But a big part of that is data's not that good anyway at this point. Honestly, all these different systems, each department thinks it has the best possible information. But when you compare it openly with the university's records or other records from other departments, you find errors, many errors. So this is also a cleaning process to make sure that the data we do have is good, dependable data. So, I've worn everyone out. It's time to eat.
Thank you.
Thank you.